You are listening to Fantha tracks.
He's waiting.
Classic Star Wars and the collectibles they gave us. From vintage Star Wars to the modern era of the saga. This is Collecting Tracks. Here are your hosts, Richard Hutchinson and Chris Leddy.
Welcome back to episode 2 of Collecting Tracks. So, Chris, what a great 6 weeks. It's been nice and sunny. I've been all over the place, but come over to you first. What have you done since our last show?
Yeah, I know. It's been a little bit. It's been summer vacation for the kiddos here. And yeah, we just went on a family vacation a few weeks back to Hershey Park, Pennsylvania. It's the first time going on a long road trip. It's about 7 to 8 hours drive. Yeah.
How old are the kids?
9 and 5.
Ouch.
2 girls. Yeah. It was, because I live up in New Hampshire, in New England, but it wasn't too bad. And then just doing summer stuff, keeping busy with the kids. I did do a local toy and comic show. One of my passions is doing shows, and struck a deal with another dealer to move my entire comic book inventory, which was, you know how it is when you clear out a whole section of the collection, it feels good. I mean, that's pretty much it. Just dialing in the collection. And just one other thing, definitely bummed to have missed the annual The Empire State Star Wars Collectors Club meetup in New York. That was the same week as my vacation, but I'm thinking next year, maybe we'll see you too.
Well, I was at the first one, so I would absolutely have loved to go to another one. I was so jealous at looking at the photographs of the annual. I think I was at the airport ready to come back from Cyprus, which is, but no, it looked brilliant. So well done to all the guys who put the annual on again. Great stuff. So I've been busy myself. I finished work mid-July and we had about a week of planning and packing because we had a family holiday to Cyprus. So between me and my partner, we have 4 children. So taking 6 of us to Cyprus was incredibly expensive. I'd love to know how the airlines and all of the hospitality hotels and everything class an adult as anybody over the age of 12. I mean, they must be the only people who do that. So it costs a small fortune. But we had to go over because I got married on the beach in Cyprus and it was a fantastic time. The Cypriots or the Greeks are another kind of level. Just to give you an example, I emailed them last week and I said, we still haven't got the official holiday photos back. Any ideas when they're going to arrive? The response was, you will get them when they're ready.
Classic.
No, but that's them.
Oh my God. Yeah.
You know, they go at their own pace and you've just got to wait. I've spent
congratulations. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
That's awesome.
Thanks. Thank you. So I spent a lot of time recataloguing my collection again, comics. I've been on this morning for about 2 hours. And my God, and you've got Legends and you've got, the early Dark Horse stuff and you've got Marvel. And I swear I haven't even got one shelf done. I'm looking for comics that I know I've got, but I'm thinking, do I have them in trade paperback format or do I have them in single comic issues? And I'm just rummaging through boxes and doing checklists and I just lost the will to live after about an hour. So
I understand completely. Earlier this year, I went through my entire comic collection and cataloged everything. Yeah, it was overwhelming. And I never wanted to look at a comic book again. And hence why I sold off most of my inventory. But that's all my show inventory. I have my own personal collection too. But yeah, I hear you.
I've heard a lot of collectors over the years say one of the worst things to do, because it's happened to them, is to have a friend die and leave the collection for them to sort out. So the kind of, the rule is you get rid of it before you die because nobody wants to go through all the cataloguing and the packaging and the shipping and it's just, So, yeah. And of course, and you pull, no, I've got a double. Oh, I've got a triple, never mind a double. Why have I bought that one 3 times now? Yeah. But anyway, on to this show then. So I thought, and this came from a conversation I had with an uncle of mine. We were having a barbecue because obviously you're getting married abroad and not all the relatives are going to come over. So we had a barbecue back home and we got to talking about Star Wars, and my wife's never watched Star Wars, has no interest in it whatsoever. But he piped up about Alec Guinness initially and was talking about how great a coup it was getting Alec Guinness in a movie. And then he started talking about Peter Cushing. Now, obviously, once Peter Cushing's mentioned, anybody who's certain age of the UK automatically goes back to the Hammer House of Horror TV shows, the movies. And we started talking a lot about Peter Cushing. And then that got me thinking, well, hold on a second, there's been a little bit of Tarkin action figures in the news recently. So why don't we look at Tarkin? So what we're going to do is this whole show, we're going to cover the Tarkin action figure. Now, before we go into anything vintage, well, I think it makes sense that we're always going to start on the vintage and move into the modern. A couple of questions were asked at that barbecue about Tarkin action figures. And I'd only heard of one or two of these rumours, but I'd done a bit of research last week, and there were actually 4 different reasons proposed as to why there was no Tarkin action figure. So what we'll do, Chris, is we'll go through each of them in order, and we'll just have a brief little chat about them to see whether you think they're plausible, utter rubbish, or whether, after we get down to all 4, perhaps you've heard of a 5th one. So the first one was that Peter Cushing refused to have his likeness released as an action figure. Now, I've got my own opinion and thoughts on that one, but what do you think about that one, Chris? Have you heard that one before, and what do you think of it?
I have heard of that, and the only thing I can think of is maybe the whole stigma of having your likeness on a toy or something like that. Maybe he felt too distinguished to have his likeness on that level. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, George was quite clever, wasn't he? And I think he would have signed them up to, you're going to have your likeness in any kind of merchandising. And Peter Cushing's all over posters, he's all over other things as well. So would he have refused himself as an action figure? Now, what would have been interesting, I should have done this, was I should have had a look to see if there were any Hammer House of Horror action figures or dolls. There are modern ones, but from back in the 50s and 60s.
I was going back through, and I personally couldn't find anything unless there's some bootleg stuff. I couldn't really find any specifically with his exact likeness on them. But, I mean, there's decades and decades of, films that he did. So it's possible that there was something on a smaller scale produced for one of his films.
I'm going to put this one down to very, very minimal chance. And I think if Alec Guinness had done the same, I would have been far more okay. That, the Guinness, the Cushion, they weren't interested in that kind of stuff. Alec Guinness was happy, so I think that one's a minor chance of being true. Now, the second one, I was discussing this one with Yehuda at the first annual, coincidentally. Who would want an action figure of a boring old man that the kids wouldn't want to play with? Thoughts?
Well, initially you're like, yeah. If you look at the other 3 3/4 inch figures around that time, you had figures, I mean, I might be getting my dates wrong, but I mean, obviously there was the Fisher-Price figures that the prototypes were based off of, and you had other shows like The Love Boat, MASH, Mego figures, all these other 3 3/4 inch figures around that time, and there was Lone Ranger, and maybe George felt that way, but I think there's definitely an argument for that particular question.
And obviously people are going to point Obi-Wan Kenobi, but at least Kenobi had a lightsaber and had some kind of action to him, which probably leads into point 3. Now, this one I'd never heard of before, but apparently it was on the forums a few years ago. The Death Squad commander was chosen because at least he had a blaster in the movie, therefore had more action, therefore was more sellable. Thinking of that one myself personally, I thought, yeah, absolutely, I can see that, but surely Tarkin could have been packaged with a blaster, and therefore that compensates that whole argument. Or were they perhaps even looking at army builders that early on? I wouldn't have thought so myself. But
no, this is the one that I had known about for some time. Maybe that's from Kenner's perspective, brainstorming with Lucasfilm on why we would have a particular character have a figure, and it makes sense. But then, like you said, you could just pack Tarkin with the blaster. But that army builder mentality, did it exist back then? Tough to say. You could look at the Stormtroopers and the Tusken Raider and Jawa. They already had army builders there. So that's probably the biggest one, in my opinion.
Hi, this is Hugh Quashing. I've had great pleasure in recording this interview for Fantha Tracks.
Now, what I do like, and I hadn't heard this one until doing some research, is the fourth rumour that I had. In that the second wave of characters that came out after the first 12 were more fun. They were bright. They were aliens. They were droids. You got another Luke. And I think that one, out of all four of them, and possibly a little bit of one or two of the other ones as well, the fourth one for me made more sense because the next wave of 8 that came out, your Cantina aliens, they were brilliant, and those captured the kids' imaginations far more than the Rebel Soldier would have done.
Yes.
The Fleet Commander all wanted one, or Tarkin.
Yeah, I agree. It kind of filled out some of those more fun types of characters that Star Wars was all about. I mean, as far as importance of character, I think that was put on the back burner. They were looking for the types of figures that kids would actually want to play with. These aliens, droids, like you said, the colors brighter, definitely there. That makes a lot of sense for me. And it just kind of pushed Tarkin, by the wayside. And obviously he wasn't in any of the other films. So it didn't make sense for Star Wars to revisit that character until, maybe later.
So I would love to hear if anybody has any other theories or whether, you can dismiss some of the ones that were put forward or actually have something, this is concrete, this is what happened, because I can't find anything at all. But I would love to have that one wrapped up. You've just said there's some things that will come to later on might automatically quash some of those ones that we've come out with.
Hi, this is Guy Henry and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. Enjoy.
So, Tarkin collectors then. Quite a bit of vintage items out there, and to the best of my knowledge, I think virtually everything should be fairly cheap and easy to acquire. So the Japanese bottle cats, I think every single Star Wars collector has one or two of these dotted around. They're very, very easy to pick up. Don't think we had these in the UK, these kind of Coca-Cola, pop the lids and see what's underneath them. To be honest with you, I don't even remember glass bottles.
Yeah.
It definitely was big in Canada for sure.
It was before my time, and I've come across these bottle caps at shows and meetups and that sort of thing. Most of the ones I see are Japanese ones, just because of collectors bringing them over or getting them from Japan, just because it's something different, something unique. It's funny that we get Tarkin on something like this, and on the surface, nothing really came to mind as far as like vintage collectibles for Tarkin. But the research that you did, pulling up all these things that Tarkin appears on, Tarkin collectors, they've got some stuff to work with, and these bottle caps are a nice, cheap, easy way to dip your toes in.
My advice for anybody collecting these bottle caps is to buy bulk lots. I've done that myself with various things, and then you pick through things you want, you upgrade, and then you sell the bulk lots for pretty much what you paid for the lot in the first place. There were 2 Tarkins in these bottle caps. There was one where he's standing next to Vader, gazing at Vader, and there's one that's a headshot as well. So both of them are very, very easy to pick up. But the problem with these Japanese bottle caps is that some collectors, over the decades, have done a lot of research on those, and found there's 7 different types to collect on the Coca-Cola side of it. So 3 of them I was quite happy in understanding, obviously there was going to be a Coca-Cola one, there was going to be a Sprite, and there was going to be orange Fanta. But in the research I found there was 5 different flavours of Fanta. And I was like, what on earth? You didn't get that in the UK. You may get 2 flavours now, orange Fanta, lemon Fanta, and I think they dabbled with perhaps apple Fanta at one time. But back then it seemed to be they were trying all sorts over in Japan and America, the Coca-Cola company.
Doesn't surprise me that Coca-Cola as a company would put it on every type of soda or pop that they made. I mean, give it to the Star Wars collectors. To me, I think Star Wars collectors basically invented the idea of like a run or a focus, like getting one of every version of of the bottle caps, or you name it, whatever collectible. And I just think it's funny that, of course, there's 5, 7 different versions of this, because only a Star Wars fan or collector would unearth that.
Yes, absolutely. So these caps came out in 1978. So they are quite pitted, and most of them will be bent from being prized open. But I'm led to believe that Fanta Apple, for whatever reason, is the toughest of the sets to find. So good little challenge here for somebody hunting down Tarkin items. So moving on to the next one, UK products, Helix, they brought out a set of erasers. And in one of those sets was Moff Tarkin, which again had a headshot of Peter Cushing on there. Now, The UK, certainly with their artwork, I thought their artwork at times was absolutely brilliant. They didn't use a lot of the studio stills, which some of the American companies did. Although, Dixie Cups and things that will come to later on, they were fantastic as well. But for whatever reason, the UK used artists, and the Moff Tarkin one is actually a pretty good likeness of him. Although Tarkin will be fairly easy to get as an eraser, getting one in any kind of good condition is going to be really, really tough. I do like the eraser items.
I love the artwork of this eraser. I don't really recall seeing this eraser before, but yeah, good luck finding an eraser from, the 70s in decent shape, let alone still in the package. And it's cool that they had something like this.
Now, the next one, most people think of the Star Wars fan club badges mainly because they're one of the few items that has George Lucas's face on. So the fan club badges, these were a set of 12 badges that children back in the 80s could get if they joined the official Star Wars fan club. And in the 12, there is one with Moff Tarkin in it. There is a caveat on these. I'm not sure if you're aware, Chris, of the amount of fakes of these that turned up in the 1990s.
Anything Star Wars, you got to be skeptical with this vintage of fakes. It's unfortunate, but I'm not sure exactly the tell signs, but definitely be wary. If you're targeting one, look into it and ask maybe some other collectors. Do you know what the tell signs are by any chance?
I do, because there was an excellent article on the SWCA. I bought a pack of sealed badges. Now, these badges came from a reputable seller, and he sourced them from a reputable dealer in the States who'd had these for a long time. So obviously these badges, if these had been made in the 90s, you can understand why somebody's picked them up, held onto them for 20, 30 years and then assumed they're genuine. But I've talked to a few people about these, see whether there was a second wave of them made. But the general consensus is that common ones that we're seeing now are fake, and you can buy them in bags that are faked as well. And the clue was there that they were in a bag. There weren't a lot of money. I think only paid maybe $30, $40 for a sealed bag of them. But the obvious way you can tell is if they look shiny and new, considering these things should be 40 years. There's your first clue. Right. But secondly, to do with the backs. So on the badges, which I think Americans call them buttons, don't they? On the backs of them, there should be a smooth concave surface.
Yep.
Whereas on the fakes, they have a flat, which leads to a flat circular surface inside, which you see on more modern badges. So that's the most obvious telltale sign. There is a brilliant article, which I think was done by Duncan Jenkins, that goes through the bleed and the fonts and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, just flipping them over and having a look at the backs is the most obvious way of telling them. But again, the genuine ones do come up. If anybody's looking for a Moff Tarkin fan club badge, you should be able to pick one up fairly easily. As I say, they'll just check the bags. Do you ever see these come up at toy shows?
I don't see too many of them. Sometimes guys will have one or two, but for being a fairly common item, just don't see a ton of them at the shows that I go to anyway. I'm sure some of the bigger shows, I guess I've seen them in shops and in antique shops. Usually they're just beat to hell. Mm-hmm. So it's never been something that I've targeted for my collection. For me personally, I almost think it's kind of cooler that it's kind of worn out and, it was appreciated back in the day. Gives it some character.
Yeah, absolutely. Any vintage collector at times has to get what you get. These are 40 years old. They were designed to last and be in, pristine condition for collectors years later. So, next item then, the Burger King glass. These were, completely unknown to me until the Sunsweet book came out or the internet really took off, because we did not have, to be honest with you, I don't even remember Burger King being in the UK back then. I do remember Burger King coming in the late 80s, but before that, no idea. So these were a set of glasses, and on one of the glasses, there's a brilliant shot of Vader with a stormtrooper and Grand Moff Tarkin at the base. And I love these Burger King glasses. They do seem to appear quite regularly. Yeah,
these are something that, whether it's Star Wars, Empire, or Return of the Jedi, I can pretty much guarantee that every collectible shop has at least one of them, or antique shop. And it's been that way since I was a kid. I never had any of the Star Wars ones, but I remember growing up, we had a bunch of the Empire and definitely the Return of the Jedi ones. I guess I didn't really notice that Tarkin was even on one of these glasses until probably the late 90s when I had come across one. Again, great artwork. Most of these were used heavily.
Have you heard about the Massachusetts glasses?
Yes.
Not glasses.
Yeah, because I live in New Hampshire and Massachusetts is the next state south of me. And funny story, probably about 2015 when I got back into collecting, I had gotten wind of a collection and purchased the entire, there was no action figures, but it was all paraphernalia and miscellaneous items. And within that collection, there was 2 sets of the Burger King plastic cups, 4 of them. And yeah, I actually didn't really realize how rare they were. And I had given away a set at a Secret Santa, and it was a Star Wars meetup at Rob and Matea's house, Micro Rob. And when the person opened it, everybody was like, oh my God, that's an awesome gift, because it was only supposed to be like $20. And I was like, why? Just because it's not really my area of expertise. And they're like, you know how rare those are? And then come pandemic time, I ended up selling my second set for like over $300. So that guy got a good gift. They're tough to find in good condition, and now I'm always looking out for them. But now all the shops know what they have, and they're asking big money for them.
So I'm led to believe that the Return of the Jedi image glasses on plastic they're still tough.
Yeah.
But you can track them down. Are you aware of any Star Wars branded glasses on plastic? Because in my research, it was pointed out as being possible, but nobody had ever seen any.
I mean, especially being, right next to Massachusetts, I do not recall seeing any myself. I mean, it's possible I came across them, but just didn't realize it. But yeah, no collectors that I know locally have any. Unfortunately, time and many a yard sale or boot sale, these things are kind of gone by the wayside if they actually were a thing.
So I think a lot of talk and interested collectors have went, thank goodness for that.
Yeah, right. Totally.
Right, then staying with plastic then and moving over back to everybody's favourite soft drink company, Coca-Cola. So tumblers. I mean, there are lots and lots of Coca-Cola tumblers, but 2 of them in particular have a Grand Moff Tarkin. So you have one which was released in 1977, and it has Tarkin with Leia and Vader. A shot outside of the Death Star looking into space. So that is a really good shot. The second one I'm not so keen on. I don't know if it's just the colours. The other one has Vader and Tarkin, and this one was released in 1979, and it's just... Basically, that's all it is. But it's the reds and the yellows and the browns. I don't like that. Now, the first cup I mentioned, the 1977 one, it's often referred to as the Cooley cup, or it has Cooley written on it. I have no idea what Cooley is at all.
Cool. I wonder if it's a particular type of it was a restaurant or store or something back then. I don't know what that's all about, but honestly, this is the first time I'm seeing these cups. Not something that I've ever come across. I don't know what the overall rarity of these are, but I'm with you. Definitely the Cooley cup with Tarkin, Leia, and Vader looking out the viewport. Yeah, definitely a better image, in my opinion, than the other one.
Absolutely, and I've seen those cups advertised as Cooley cups as well, and I never really knew why, because I knew them as Coca-Cola tumblers, but
sure.
I guess that's some way to differentiate between the two.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
What's interesting about this one is, a few years ago you could pick up the Wonder Bread trading cards, a full set for around about $15-20, brand new, immaculate condition, and then something happened and they were going for $100-150. I really hope that's settled back down again, because one of those 16 trading cards has Grand Moff Tarkin and his name Peter Cushing on it.
I mean, I'm immersed in the trading card industry, and yes, these blew up, and they have come back to reality, but still command a little bit more than they did 3-4 years ago. But the Wonder Bread version with Peter Cushing, Grand Moff Tarkin's face, right there looking at you, staring you down, looking into your soul, just a great image. And the thing about these is the condition. Obviously, condition is everything with most collectibles, and trading cards were not regarded as top tier items. So they were handled by kids, put in bike spokes, all that stuff. So, these in really good condition, graded high, still command decent money, but you can find them. I was just looking on eBay earlier just to get a feel for where some of these prices are. And I mean, you can get good examples for $15, $20, $30 that are already graded.
It's good to know those prices have come down, and we do know some collectors who've got full sets ready to sell, who thankfully didn't jump into the whole bandwagon of getting them out for $100, $150. So yeah, nice items. I do like the Wonder Bread trading cards. I think they're a nice size. Sticking with trading cards then, and you talked about images, because certainly there's one of the images on here I found quite spooky. But Topps trading cards. So we'll start off with the blue set first. So the blue set, Series 1, we've got 2 Tarkins. We've got card 8 and card 60. Now, when I collect these trading cards, incredibly easy to pick up. Is that still the case?
Yeah, I mean, you can find them pretty much anywhere. I've got a bunch of these. A number of the shops around me have them readily available. But again, not the greatest condition, so they are easily attainable. And again, all the Star Wars vintage trading cards saw that boom and have come back to reality. But it's those super high grade ones, especially this blue set, where not a lot of collectors really super particular with the condition of the cards, but these ones were really tough to get perfectly centered, and that's a big thing nowadays with trading cards. I mean, you still see some of these PSA graded 10s of this original set going for thousands of dollars because they're so difficult to find in that condition. But everyday collection, regular, you can pick them up $1.50 at shows.
Now, it's the next set. One of the shots of Tarkin there, I mean, it looks harrowing. It's a shot of his face where he's sort of got his head tilted down, but his eyes are looking up, boring into your skull. And I think if he's signed that off, surely you would sign off an action figure.
Oh my goodness. It is the stuff of nightmares, straight out of his Frankenstein movies or Van Helsing, that is super disturbing. I don't even like looking at it right now.
So that's the yellow set numbers 149 and 181. And the last card I know of is in the green set, which is number 229. And again, that's a typical kind of shot of Tarkin, where he's quite pensive in his thoughts. He didn't do a lot in the movie, so they didn't have a lot of, action to choose from. But I think those Topps trading cards, all very cheap. I think they were well worth picking up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's always fun having a few of those in the collection. I'm very much about the display aspect of it. And if you've got a number of Tarkin items, you put it in a case and you got it on a little stand and you add it to the display to add something different.
Now, something I am completely clueless about, because I don't think we had these in the UK at all. And to be honest with you, I don't even remember Star Wars trading cards. I do remember DC, Superman and various other things. And,
sure.
But I just didn't have pocket money and there weren't any shops for me to just go and purchase these. But the American sets had stickers in some of the packs. So there were 2 top stickers that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I think later series had different stickers inserted into packs. I think you got 1 per pack. There's the 2 cards. I mean, both headshots of Tarkin. One with his head being outlined in yellow with reddish starfield in the back, labeled Grand Moff Tarkin. And then the other one kind of looked like a film reel, and it's just his headshot. That one's number 28. The other one's number 8. Again, these are super condition sensitive, really difficult to find in high grade, but you can find these all over the place.
All right, so even those stickers are easy to pick up, are they?
Yes, they are.
Right, I didn't know that. I mean, as far as vintage collecting is concerned, that is probably your whole set to get. Although, if the purist who wants to cover everything for Tarkin, you're never ever going to complete your set because it appears on posters as well. My knowledge of posters is woeful. I'm aware that there's Coca-Cola promotions which had Tarkin on. He was obviously on the main theatrical poster as well. We covered posters a little bit last month, but just to make our listeners aware that Tarkin appears a lot in posters, therefore you're going to assume lobby cards, leaflets, various other things. So it's never ending.
No, it's never ending. And then you've got to get all the different language ones and then so on and so forth.
Well, I was going to keep away from that because obviously the UK Topps trading cards have a different numbering system to the American Topps trading cards, and then they got Mexican trading cards.
Right. There's so many different languages. There's a couple collectors in the hobby that are huge collectors in the Star Wars trading card field, and they've got complete sets from every language. And you've got O-Pee-Chee in Canada. You've got, all these different brands and stuff. I mean, you could just go down a serious rabbit hole. I mean, that's what makes it fun. But when you start getting into those foreign releases, like super rare stuff, obviously that usually brings along a high price tag.
Hi, Paul Blake here, Greedo from Star Wars A New Hope, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
That wraps up the vintage lot really nicely, I think, but we're going to move into the modern area now because Tarkin made a comeback in quite a big way, I think. Now, one of the things I want to talk about first of all, and this is something I only found out about a week ago, this was on the SWCA, and this is a custom Grand Moff Tarkin. It's quite an interesting, I mean, today obviously customs you see them all over the place, and there's some brilliant customs out there, and I'm not going to knock anybody for customs. I think customs have their place in the hobby. But these ones, this has been on the SWCA for a long time, you're probably talking 20 years or more. And there is a carded General Dodonna, but there's also a carded Grand Moff Tarkin. Do you just want to describe the card back, Chris, and what they've done about it? What are your thoughts about how they've done it? Bearing in mind this would have been pre-digital. Okay,
so the card back, it's a original Star Wars card back release with the racing track, Luke and Leia up in the corner. It's got a headshot of Tarkin looking off into the distance, and it looks very professional as far as like the vintage of this actual custom. There is no nameplate for the character's name. Yeah, they've got a custom bubble, and I think they used a Imperial Commander figure and then potentially a custom head sculpt. But I could see this actually being used for a real release.
Absolutely. I think as far as the card back's concerned, he's absolutely nailed that. I think that's the shot, possibly menacing over Leia. One of those two shots would have been the good image. But I love it, and I think it's ingenious, and I'd love to know more about those. This is cutting and gluing and sticking, so I'd imagine the card back now would look quite tatty, but the photograph, it would be nice to see this, I think, if Gus still has it. I would like to see how that's weathered in the last 20 or 30 years. But brilliant job, love it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it would be cool to get an update to this post. Yeah, got to give it to the individual that went this far. It's one thing for Tarkin. Dodonna is a different story back then. It's even less of a role, but still cool nonetheless.
This is very much vintage, but it only came out, I want to say maybe 4 or 5 years ago now. I bet you it was 10, how time flies. But this goes back to, what was said at the start about Peter Cushing and signing off his likeness and was Tarkin considered. But what we have here is, it's on the SWCA, and it's a 1977 product list, including unproduced toys. And what's there on line 6 or 7, Chris?
A Star Wars mini Tarkin.
Yeah,
noted.
Absolutely. Now, this is brilliant, not just for the fact, of course, that Tarkin was down for consideration the date of 17th of August 1977, along with other items, which there is a mini Rebel pilot, which I believe the consensus is that one ended up being Luke X-Wing pilot.
Sure.
But then you've got the Droids factory also listed. Got no idea what the Rebel ground support crew would have been.
I want one. No, I'm sure we got one. I know we've got one in later lines, but yeah, that's like the crew in the Rebel base, like pushing around the supplies and stuff like that. That's what I think of when I see that.
So I love this. It's just such a nice item, and its historical value can't be. It's such an important piece piece of, history. Some of the other stuff in there is obviously not Star Wars related, but I love the idea of a shocking Death Star game.
Yeah, because the Death Star game was not very shocking.
No, absolutely not. Again, we touched on that one last month as well, didn't we? But that's not the end of Tarkin in the kind of time period, is it, Chris?
No, it's not. And again, more news that's new to me. The great team with the SWCA, with Ron Salvatore, bringing in this conceptual presentation piece for the potential photo art for a figure that would have been in the post Power of the Force timeframe, like right in 1985, I think it is. So maybe this would have been another wave carrying on the Power of the Force line.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Peter Cushing died in the mid-1990s. Mm-hmm. So for them to have this and to have gone to, the idea of milling around still with Tarkin, I think the fact that he refused to sign off his figure must have been a non-starter. It must have been, surely. That's twice now Kenner have at least kicked around with the idea of releasing a Tarkin figure.
It's such a bummer, to think of what could have been if Kenner had stuck with that Power of the Force line. But yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's amazing that this piece was unearthed. Like you said, it's important historical piece for, the Star Wars line to have something like this still in existence. Very cool.
Moving into the modern era, there have been some really, really good Tarkins, I think. Mm-hmm. But we had to wait until 1997 for the Power of the Force 2, as I'm calling it now, for the first view of Tarkin. And I've got to admit, I was kind of like a bit, is that the best they could do? I mean, that's not my Tarkin.
It's not mine either, but I was into collecting at that time. I mean, I was getting full waves, I was getting multiple figures, I was getting all the variations, the ones with like the different number stamps on the back. So when this Tarkin figure was announced, because I was getting all the magazines, and obviously looking back, it was cool to finally have gotten one. And the figure does have some pluses, but you can see over the years the skills of the sculptors and what they can do, especially with the hands. Like the hands were really big and the weapons were really chunky. And yeah, it was cool to finally get a Tarkin in 3 3/4 scale.
It absolutely was, but for me, they didn't get it right until the Escape from the Death Star game came out in the retro line. And I think that Tarkin was brilliant. And you purchased that, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. The retro line for me, I mean, there's so much they can do with it. Obviously, we've seen multiple ways for the newer series. But for me, like what I really want from that series is to get more unreleased figures. And this is, once I get my vintage display area set up, all these retro figures from the original trilogy are going to go right in there with them. And I have no problem doing that because I really do love this figure.
Absolutely. I did buy the figure direct from China without buying a whole set. It cost us about the same amount of money.
Right.
In fact, I'm shipping into it, of course, like an idiot, but never mind. But I like the card back image on this, and I had a quick flick through all of the other, the Topps trading cards. Yeah. Nothing exactly matches that. So they've gone back and done the full, okay, so this is the image we're going to use, and that's what we may have got in the original line if you had it came out.
I like that they did that. They didn't rehash an image that we had seen over and over again. Another plus overall for this figure.
With other lines, I only came across 2, unless you know of any others. One of them is the Gentle Giant 12-inch Jumbo Tarkin. And I've got to say, I think this one's pretty good as well. I thought that one was a good representation of Tarkin. And I do like these Jumbo figures.
Oh, yeah, they're really cool, especially to see in person. It's a line that I admire from afar just because the size of the packaging and everything. Really, if you want to display it that way, good luck on you finding the space for it. It looks like he's got Admiral Akbar's
stuff.
An interesting choice. I don't know where they got that idea from, but cool. I actually kind of like the likeness of the Hasbro Retro one a little bit better. I think they could have emphasized the cheekbones a little bit more on this one.
I've seen a lot of the 12-inch jumbo action figure lines, but I've never seen a Tarkin, so I've got no idea how easy these are to find or track down.
I've never seen this one. It's an Entertainment Earth exclusive. As with most Star Wars things, if it's exclusive and it was hard to get, I'm sure the prices in the secondary market are much higher than retail.
Well, heading to your main area of specialty, Chris, and the six-scale figure by Hot Toys.
So Grand Moff Tarkin had a release from Hot Toys. He had a single release, and then he also was included in a 2-pack with Vader. And I've had this figure myself. It is stunning. The fit and finish of the tailoring is just top-notch. The likeness, it's amazing. I mean, Hot Toys has gotten better and better with their sculpting and painting apps and everything over the years, but this figure holds up so well compared to newer ones. I had to dial down the collection. I had the 2-pack and I sold that. There's been rumblings that he's likely to get another release, which would be really cool to see, especially with what Hot Toys is doing these days with the paint apps and everything. But yeah, amazing figure. He commands much more than retail. If you're an OT collector, especially with 6-scale, it's pretty much a must-have.
Do you think the 6-scale figures get the respect that they should deserve from vintage collectors, or is it improving, declining?
It's funny you say that, because being both a vintage collector and a 6-scale collector, when I first started getting into the line in 2018, there was almost nobody was in the vintage. They didn't even want to look. I mean, this is just from my perspective. Like, nobody really gave the Hot Toys too much notice, but there's a lot of guys now that have Hot Toys in their collections. I would like to say I had a part in exposing everybody to that. I just like the difference from the vintage style sculpting to the like absolute movie accurate, the juxtaposition like between one extreme to the other. I just think it's a really cool element in any display.
Well, I think this has been a great show, Chris, on Talk, and I'm sure most of our listeners will go, oh no, I didn't know about that. I wasn't aware of anything like that at all. So hopefully everybody's picked up something. I certainly know I did, and doing the research, finding a lot about Talking, and I've got to say the Hot Toys one for me, I love it.
Yeah, there's so much more, especially me being really into the trading card area. I mean, there's even new releases that have just came out recently from Topps, all shiny, different parallels, all kinds of cool stuff, not only with the original Tarkin, but with the version from Clone Wars. And you can get autograph cards from Steven Stanton, who voiced Tarkin in the Clone Wars. You can get all kinds of cool stuff still coming out to this day. So if you're a Tarkin fan, no need to worry. You got plenty to look for.
Well, thanks very much for your time again, Chris. This has been absolutely blast, and I look forward to the next one.
Absolutely. Always a great chat.
So thanks for listening to Collecting Tracks. If you want to be part of the action, stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com or check out the free Fantha Tracks app through the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds @FanthaTracks, and be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Fantha Tracks intro, Andy Lythe for our Collecting Tracks open music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Remember to tune in to Good Morning Tatooine, live Sunday evenings at 9 PM UK time, 4 PM Eastern and 1 PM Pacific on Facebook and YouTube. Check out Fantha Tracks Radio Friday evenings at 7 PM UK time for new episodes of The Fantha from Down Under, Planet Leia, Desert Planet Discs, Start Your Engines, Collecting Tracks and Cannon Fodder, and every Tuesday at 7 PM UK time for your weekly episode of Making Tracks.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Making Tracks.